Welcome everyone to the last day of virtual programming for the 2021 Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit, and welcome to our session this morning, Preserving Our Legacy, Unique Approaches to Conservation and Recreation in Rural Oregon. We have the pleasure of two panels in the next 90 minutes supporting a couple goals of this year's summit. First, to build a culture of environmental and cultural stewardship and healthy recreation, and to attract a wide range of visitors that contribute to Oregon's urban and rural economies. We'll hear about the work of Owyhee Sportsmen Coalition, which brings together conservation groups and land managers together to secure long-term policies, protecting the Owyhee Canyonlands' rugged character, solitude, and hunting angling traditions that Oregonians love and wish to preserve. First, though, we'll hear from my colleague Jill Nishball with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, where she and partners will discuss how Oregon came to have our first international dark sky park and further opportunities for astro-tourism as a way to boost rural economies here in the state. If you've been to other sessions, you know that I'm going to encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat box as a way to get to know who else is in the room. And feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll either try to answer those in the chat or as time allows with a live Q&A. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way and welcome Jill to the stage. Take it away, Jill.
Okay, perfect. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Kaylin, for the introduction. I just want to say we're really honored to be here with you to share our excitement and thoughts about an all-important, what I would say, universal natural resources, which every one of us can appreciate, and that is the dark night sky. Before we begin, I just want to say, in the spirit of our presentation in recognizing Oregon's special places, I want to add our group's agreed upon addition to the summit's land acknowledgement, and that is that we respect the original caretakers of the land, and we seek to learn more and to take actions that demonstrate our eagerness to continue caring for the land and the resource treasures within every corner of this wonderful state we call Oregon. So, as Kaylin mentioned, we have two separate panels and 8 panelists to share information with you. We will all introduce each other as we move forward. So I'm just going to start out as our first speaker, again, Jill Nishball. I serve as one of 3 program coordinators within our agency at State Parks, and I serve specifically our mountain region parks, which are all those properties in southern, central, and eastern Oregon, and I work out of our Bend region office. For our half of the show today, I'm going to start us out just to showcase how Oregon State Parks got involved in this work and how far we've come at this point. And then I'll share a couple of ideas at the end for the future in order to preserve this legacy of dark night skies in Oregon. And thank you to my fellow panelists for coming along with me. So before I get into the how OPRD is involved, I just wanted to share a little bit about our why. And what that is basically to talk about why we would get involved in an initiative like this. It's really 3 ideas which correspond directly to our agency's goals, and that includes protecting Oregon special places. The second thing is providing great experiences for people who come to visit. And the third thing is combining those, basically to do both of those things really well and for as long as we can. It's really that simple. So we not only desire to make your park experience richer and more meaningful, but we're in the business of memory making, is the way I like to look at it. We want you to care about parks when you come to visit us, but we also want you to see the underlying connections wherever you might go. Hopefully, when you're out visiting our parks, we can do a good job to create that context of caretaking and also the natural, cultural, spiritual, historic resources within them in a way that when you return back to your homes and communities and back, you can take that message of stewardship back home with you and start to build that in your family, your community, with your children. So, like Kaylin said, this year we have something exciting to celebrate, and that's in May of this year, Prineville Reservoir State Park became the first and the only certified international dark sky park in Oregon. And just a dark sky park basically is a land which has exceptional quality of starry night skies and a nocturnal environment that is protected as such. We're going to hear a lot more about that from Michael McKeag, who follows me. This effort did start with the interest of one particular park ranger at Prineville, but didn't do that alone. Several other folks were involved over the course of 2 years to help us achieve this certification. We've been working closely with the fine folks from Oregon IDA chapter, International Dark Sky Association. But you might not already know that this park actually has a long history in bringing attention to the dark night skies there. In fact, 2019 marked the 20th anniversary of our annual Star Party, which is held each spring at that location. What we do is we schedule a Star Party event on the Saturday night in the spring, either May or June, closest to the full moon, so we can have as dark sky, or excuse me, the new moon, a dark sky as possible. We have been hosting that event for 20 years with the Oregon Observatory here in Central Oregon in Sun River. They help us bring a variety of educational programs for both kids and adults during this event. So it's been a great run, and whether our visitors come during the day and listen to presentations or participate in kids' activities, or they're there at night to view the dark sky with us, everyone's learning about astronomy. They are focusing on our understanding and connections to the night sky. They're learning more about the effects of light pollution. And hopefully they're going to stick around and personally experience why this resource is worth preserving. So just to take you a little bit further, as far as the certification process goes, it is something that takes time, money, and community support. It's not just, just something you can just throw out there and pursue really quickly. It took us about 2 years. And so I just kind of wanted to run through real quickly a couple of the overall application elements. And that is to show our intent to participate and to achieve that certification, we had to submit some letters of support from the community, also from park managers. We conducted a physical inventory of all of the light fixtures in the park, and that includes not only the approach from the road, the campground, restroom, other buildings, shop areas. We got readings from special sky quality meters over a period of time. As part of the plan, we have to come up with a lighting management plan that's required to describe our commitment to maintaining that quality outdoor lighting over time that won't interfere with the night sky viewing. And then we need to make sure that we're providing nighttime public access. Over time, as part of our application, we need to demonstrate that we're committing time, staffing, and resources to public education, and that can be through programming, through signage, and outreach that we do into the community. And then finally, what we need to do is submit an annual report that demonstrates how we're making progress over time. Can someone advance the slide? I can't seem to get to the next one. Thank you. So as part of our application and our public education effort, we created this sign to erect on the observatory building, which is next to the lake, and it houses our telescope. Not only is the sign mounted throughout the year, but we also have a video monitor there that describes all the educational astronomy related programming that occurs at the park. As you can see, the sign communicates important messages about why darkness does matter, whether at the park or at home. It includes messages which are concerns for everyone, how light pollution on Earth affects residential and migrating wildlife, and our own health. Next slide. Just to tell you what is happening, not only has Prineville achieved this great certification, other parks have expressed a desire to get involved. And right now we're working with 2 other parks that are currently working with IDA members to achieve their certification as part of the application process. And that's Willowa Lake up in Northeast Oregon and Cottonwood Canyon down in a deep, dark canyon near the Columbia River in Sherman County. And then you can see there's 3 other parks that have expressed interest in getting started. Last slide. So what's next for us? Basically, we know that we need to move forward to get more parks on the application track, to do more, to build partnerships, to create an outreach plan. So those are the kinds of things we want to do. We kind of want to be a mini Utah, and Justina will tell you a lot more about what Utah State Parks has achieved. But basically, we want to bring people into the parks at night and get them looking up. A couple of ideas. I've been an advocate for creating some kind of collectible, perhaps a night sky passport, where people can travel to remote parks across the state of Oregon and get a stamp and be prideful that they've been to these places. As you think more about this topic after the presentation, I just want you to encourage you to think about what can make this kind of experience more memorable and meaningful to you and your family. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Michael McKeag, founder and director of the IDA chapter in Oregon.
Well, I'm Michael McKeag, an IDA delegate and co-founder, director, and board member of IDA Oregon, the Oregon chapter of the International Dark Sky Association. The International Dark Sky Association was founded in 1988 with the mission to preserve and protect the nighttime environment and our heritage of dark skies through quality outdoor lighting. IDA's primary method in pursuing this mission is public education and advocacy, which takes many forms and spans the globe. IDA programs include, as a primary, their International Dark Sky Places program, which was launched in 2001 with the stated goal to encourage communities, parks, and protected areas around the world to preserve and protect dark sky sites through responsible lighting policies and public education. There are 5 types of designations. International Dark Sky Communities. These are legally organized cities and towns, so they can enforce their own ordinances, in particular their own lighting ordinance. And then there are International Dark Sky Parks, Prineville Reservoir now being one example, which are publicly and privately owned spaces with dark skies. There are International Dark Sky Reserves, a dark sky core surrounded by populated periphery. International Dark Sky Sanctuaries, the most remote and darkest places in the world. And urban night sky places, sites near or surrounded by large urban environments that can actively promote an authentic nighttime experience, despite some degree of light pollution. There are currently over 170 dark sky places worldwide, and the rate at which applications are being received by IDA has increased significantly in the last couple of years. IDA Oregon, the Oregon chapter of IDA, was founded in 2019 Our stated mission to preserve Oregon's magnificent dark skies and to diminish light pollution for the health, safety, and well-being of all life. We pursue this through public education, outreach, and research. One project of ours is the Oregon Sky Glow Measurement Network, which we'll go into a little more detail shortly. Another project is supporting certification of international dark sky places in Oregon. And Jill just mentioned Prineville Reservoir is one of our initial successes in that regard. Turning to the Oregon Sky Glow Measurement Network, this is a network of photometers measuring the zenith sky brightness. That's the brightness of the night sky directly overhead at 5-minute intervals every night of the year. We currently have about 30 stations deployed across the state. They're marked by the little yellow stars on the map. We have more planned, some of those marked by green dots. One proposal of ours in the Columbia River Gorge will be a network of stations that support the Columbia River Gorge Commission's Vital Sign Indicators program. Data from all of the stations is downloaded by site hosts every 3 months. The data is analyzed, summarized, and a report published every 6 months. And you can find a download link for a copy of that most recent report on the IDA Oregon website. So the photometers we're using are self-contained, battery-powered with an integrated data logger, and the whole thing.
All right. Hi, folks. This is Justina from Utah State Parks. Michael seems to be having a little streaming problem, so I'm going to jump in here. He's got a lot of valuable information to share, but mine will kind of dovetail that. Thanks to Jill and my fellow panelists for inviting me to join this panel. I'm going to talk about models and partnerships that Oregon State Parks is interested in trying to pursue. And I'll talk about the successes and the challenges we've had with the Utah State Parks Dark Sky Initiative. Utah State Parks, we've been in the game for 6 years now of dark skies. We have 10 dark sky parks in our Utah State Park system, and there's a myth out there that we're a machine just churning out dark sky parks. Believe me, it's not a machine. It's a very concerted effort. We have lots of dark sky parks from help from partners, volunteers, and other organizations. I have unified our dark sky stewardship messaging, and I provide continual training to our staff, and I try to nurture future dark sky stewards. In the beginning, there was darkness, and 3 of our Utah State Parks thought darkness was good. And Dead Horse Point State Park, Goblin Valley State Park, and Antelope Island State Park all began the International Dark Sky Park designation process in 2015. 2 of our parks, Dead Horse Point and Goblin, went to a meeting that was held in the summer of 2015 down in the Colorado Plateau among state parks and national parks, saying, hey, we have the opportunity. We've got very dark places. Let's go for more. Let's promote more dark sky parks and places. And the first International Dark Sky Park was in Utah way back when, and that was Natural Bridges National Monument. And we have since had many more designations, and I'll talk about those a little bit down the way. So in 2015, I hold an annual interpretation training every year for my staff. And in the summer, I always put out, what do you want to learn and what do you want to share? And in August of 2015, I got 2 replies, one from Crystal White, who is the manager of Dead Horse Point State Park and the assistant manager, and then one from James Wells, who was the interpretive manager at Goblin Valley State Park, both saying they would like to do dark sky sessions. And I said, what is dark sky? And they both filled me in, and I said, sounds awesome. Let's do that as part of our training this year. So they gave their sessions, and after their sessions, which included what an application was like and how to take measurements and then how to hold a star party, things like that. 10 parks came to me after this session, 10 additional parks, and said, hey, we're very interested in this, but we can see it is very labor intensive. Can you please help us with this? And so I put the Dark Sky, Utah State Parks Dark Sky Initiative together. So it was born in November 2015. So 4 of our parks were early in this process for us and began working, as I said, on their applications in 2015. I had interns helping with the process and did some administrative stuff like getting our resolutions passed through our state parks board to support dark sky pursuits in our parks and to put our light management plan together, things like that. So I did this administrative layer. Dead Horse Point State Park and Goblin Valley State Park were designated both in 2016. Antelope Island was then designated in 2017, and then Steinecker was designated in 2018. So we were going great guns, getting at least a designation a year. And then our state parks director, Fred Hayes, died unexpectedly in 2018, and that put a stoppage in our works because there was so much backfilling of his position and then the under position, and it was like this card game or dominoes where everybody was backfilling these positions, including people that had been our dark sky parks managers, people that were going for dark sky designation. They then moved to other positions, and so that put a kind of a spanner in the works. But we started again in earnest in 2019, and we were able to submit 6 parks for designation in 2020. One was actually designated East Canyon State Park in 2020, but due to the backlog of that IDA, as Michael earlier mentioned, there's so many submissions now. The others were not designated till 2021. But we do have East Canyon State Park, Rockport State Park, Jordanelle State Park, Kodachrome State Park, Fremont Indian State Park, and Gooseneck State Park, all designated now for a total of 10. And we have other parks in the works as well. So Utah leads the world with 24 international dark sky place designations. We have 1 international dark sky sanctuary, 1 urban night sky place, 2 international dark sky communities, and 20 international dark sky parks, of which fully half are in the state park system. The other are national parks and national monuments in the state. This would not be possible with just staff, because this takes so much time to get your, as I stated, we had many of ours starting in 2015. So it took like 5 years to get these applications fully done. And unlike our other park systems around the United States, we never shut down during the pandemic. In fact, we had 30% increased visitation. I think this year that's even gone up more. So we never had that stoppage. So they've had a glut because a lot of people have finally had time in other park systems because they weren't dealing with the public to actually work on their dark sky applications, but not us. We were still going great guns. And that's why it was so important to have our helpers on this during this time. So I have the Dark Sky Initiative put together interns, and I also have had seasonals at certain times, and we have dedicated volunteers that come and help us. We could always use more. And we have partner organizations like Clark Planetarium that's provided some training for us on telescopes. And we have Night Sky Science, who comes out and helps us with trainings and putting on programs. We have U of U South Physics Observatory, who travels all over to support our programs around the state by bringing their staff and their multiple telescopes and their knowledge to help find deep space objects. And we have astronomy clubs, like 13 in the state, and they help us put on programs and provide more telescopes. And our state parks are co-located with a lot of national parks a lot of times, and their rangers, who are dark sky rangers, come over and help with our programs, and our dark sky rangers go over and help with their programs. So that's a lovely partnership. I also have had for the past 2 years a dedicated dark sky seasonal that I've put together for 9 months of the year with various strategies over time, grants, and cost share among the parks that use her services. Currently 10 parks use her services. We would not have been able to submit those 6 dark sky applications had it not been for my great seasonal, dark sky seasonal, Shelby Stock. She's amazing. And she went out and did readings and mapping and put on programs and did social media and helped write the applications, et cetera, et cetera. She was just wonderful, still is. I have also unified our dark sky messaging. I had the idea to put together this banner. It turned out to be a 20-foot vinyl banner. Need no electricity because most of our places don't have any kind of electrical outlets where you would be putting on our dark sky programs. So we scroll and unscroll from one side this dark sky banner. It's a great thing to do after sunset and before true dark. And you can use a full cutoff flashlight and go through the panels by illuminating them and showing how directional full cutoff lighting works by illuminating each panel in the dusk. And it has like 12 panels that my graphic designer designed that have vetted IDA information on it. Especially popular is the map we're all familiar with about how light pollution has changed over the last 50 years. And other impactful stuff about how dark light pollution affects animals and human health, and some specific Utah stuff, and also lighting courtesy in campgrounds, things like that. I also provide continual dark sky training for my staff. I hold things like astrophotography and telescope training and how to put on different kinds of dark sky programs, increasingly dark sky programs that aren't dependent on the clarity of skies. And that's because of wildfires, which I will touch on later in this presentation. And then I have developed some more formal training, which I'll talk about here. We have the Utah Master Naturalist Program, which you also have the Oregon Master Naturalist Program. We always had deserts, mountains, and wetlands, and I used to work for wildlife, and I was the field school experience for the Wetlands Master Naturalist Program. And then when I moved to Parks and became a part of Dark Sky, I approached the director, Marco Larez Casanova, I said, look, you guys have mastered the terrestrial in your Master Naturalist Program. How about let's master the celestial, and let's do a Dark Sky Master Naturalist Program. Mark was totally into it. And about that time, we heard that Zach Sherrill, who was at that time a ranger, an interpretive ranger at Cedar Breaks National Monument in Utah, was working on a Master Astronomer Program. And so we joined forces with Zach, and the Utah Master Naturalist Program uses his materials, but it is not as science and astronomy intensive as his full Master Astronomer Program is. But we came up with a 9-module online course that you can take, and then when a field school becomes available, then you can take the 3-day field school and then become a certified Utah Master Naturalist in dark skies. Utah State Parks has been the host institution for all of the field schools that have been held so far. We've held 3. The plague has prevented us from holding more, which we would have liked to. And we eventually think that some of our national parks, monuments, and parks partners will host some field schools as well, but it's only been us so far, and we've put through about 40 people that have certified thus far. And it's been a great training, wonderful experience, wonderful success. I also wanted to develop future dark sky stewards, and I first hit up our 4-H program here in Utah and developed a 4-H dark sky club for them. And that has now been picked up nationally and internationally. Last time I checked, like, places in China and Cuba and South America had downloaded these dark sky modules. That is awesome. And then I had worked for a few years, and finally it was launched this July with the Utah Girl Scouts on a dark sky patch, and so happy that it's finally launched for them. But creating our next level, getting people excited to be our future dark sky stewards, I think is really important. We've also, those were some of our successes I've run through. We've also had some challenges. One of them that I mentioned earlier is employee turnover. You will have your champions like you did at Prineville, and we've had at our dark sky parks that will be so excited about getting their park designated as an international dark sky park. And then then they'll move on either within your system to another park. And sometimes that's cool because then they want to make that a dark sky park, but maybe they leave the system. And then you'll have a new manager, and sometimes they're super excited about being a dark sky park and wanting to carry on those traditions. And sometimes they either don't have the interest or don't have the skills. And so I get them trained if they have the interest. But then that's why it's important to have that layer above the individual park layer to be able to backfill and support if you lose your champions and while you're getting your new manager up to speed. So it's just important, I think, to have that extra administrative support layer for dark skies in your system. And now I've had challenges. It's been all me funding this dedicated dark sky position or figuring out how. So what I've settled on the last 2 years is this cost share among the parks that use the services, and that I also input from my budget, and we all cost share Shelby's position for 9 months. But for reasons I'm going to get into next, we need more than this 9-month position. We need a full year-round position because, oh my goodness, wildfires have so impacted us, as I'm sure they've impacted you. We didn't even have many wildfires in Utah this last season, but we were totally smoked in for most of the summer, almost every day. And that has impacted. We have many types of dark sky programs that don't rely on having to see the stars. So we do like kayaking, full moon kayaking programs, and we have scorpion safaris, and we do owl and bat programs. And we have other things that we can do that don't rely on having to see clear stars to talk about dark skies and their importance. However, for taking readings, the smoke has really gotten in our way. For instance, Dead Horse Point State Park's darkest reading this year was 21.90. And then during the smoky skies, they were down at like 20.43. So it's really, really impacted our clarity and when we can do this. And since wildfire season is now 12 months of the year, and I'm talking as a region in the Western states, because we were impacted by California and Oregon and Washington wildfire. I did a screenshot of the New York Times has launched this Wildfires of the West map, did a screenshot August 27th. You can see that Utah there in the red outline has no active wildfires. You can see where the little the flags are where there were wildfires, but you can see the darkness of the smoke and how we were being impacted. So now this is a whole regional problem. It's something that no park system alone, state can handle. This is a thing that is impacting all of us as a region that I've brought up continually now in every kind of presentation that I do like this, and then also keep mentioning it to and putting it in our reports and in our applications to IDA that, look, this is something serious now that affects when we can take dark sky readings. And so I only have my seasonal from March through November, but really the readings need to be November through March. And so I have her exactly kind of the opposite of when I need to be taking those clear readings when there's not such intense wildfire activity. And so those are some of our successes and challenges here at the Utah State Parks. And we'll look forward to any questions I can answer in chat or live. And if Robert is up, I'm going to hand it over to Robert Hackett, the Executive Director of Travel Southern Oregon. Robert, on to you.
That's great. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Hackett, and I'm the Executive Director of Travel Southern Oregon. Thank you, Justina and Michael and Jill, for outlining the IDA Dark Sky Places program and the success that state parks in Utah and increasingly in Oregon are having working with that program. I'd like to share more about our work exploring the dark sky nomination in the Oregon Outback, that vast geography of range and rivers, mountains and lakes in Lake, Harney, and Malheur counties, but more about that in a moment. From a satellite point of view, you can see on this image the vast pools of darkness we are talking about against an increasingly light-impacted geography here in the U.S. You can see the dark areas in Utah where Justina has focused her energy, the darkness of the Great Basin National Park area in Nevada and Utah, and even larger than those, the vast reservoir of darkness in the Oregon Outback, with the lights of Boise to the east and Bend to some degree in the northwest. This area with no central controlling land use agency or Park Service authority like the NPS or state parks is the geography I'll be sharing more about. Michael has shared an in-depth overview of this IDA program, and he'll pop on again to tell you more about that. I share this slide simply to ground the use of the term dark sky places with you. This is where it comes from. Some agencies and tourism offices have found using terms like night sky tourism or astro-tourism or simply stargazing as more approachable and friendly terms for visitors, but it is all the same thing and has its roots in this IDA Dark Sky Places program. There are currently 105 dark sky places in the US, with the preponderance of them being parks like Jill and Justina have described. There are only 7 approved sanctuaries. This series of slides will give you a broader view of the engagement of our Western neighbors in the Dark Sky Places program, with a lot of engagement, obviously, in Utah, like we just saw Justina talk about, the Sawtooth area of Idaho, the Colorado Plateau area of Utah, Colorado, and Arizona, and closer to home, the Great Basin National Park in Nevada, and the Basin and Range Cooperative, which brings together agencies and communities in northern Nevada and our own Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. After that 30,000-foot view of what's going on all around the West, I want to shift gears and ask, why is tourism at the table here in Oregon and at other states? The economic benefit of creating a destination asset in the remote Oregon Outback is significant. And by its very nature, night sky tourism involves overnight stays. Studies from the Colorado Plateau Group suggest that spending in that Colorado Plateau area for non-local tourists engaged in night sky activities will approach $580 million a year in this wide geography, with many national and state parks to provide a solid visitor infrastructure. Visitor spending in my small region of Southern Oregon was $1.1 billion in 2019 alone, so this seems like a very reasonable projection to me. Additionally, researchers found a 300% increase in visitor spending from night sky tourists over those not participating in such activities. Again, overnight stays are inherent to night sky tourism, and the projected economic impact reflects that. This economic impact is not tied to any kind of seasonality either, and available all year round, including for winter visitors. In Oregon, we believe that tourism agencies like Travel Oregon and Travel Southern Oregon have an ongoing responsibility to maintain good community engagement and dialogue to create messaging and publicity that is appropriate for engaged communities, and to also help develop destination assets that benefit communities rather than burden them with excess traffic or unwanted behaviors. As dark sky tourism grows in Oregon, the unique public-private partnerships cultivated in the years-long formation of the ODSN will serve as a model for regional community engagement. Another reason tourism is at the table is to help bring a wide range of communities into the conversation to become stakeholders in any project's success. This slide highlights a lodge in South Africa catering to night sky visitors and features Komani-san night sky guides who share an indigenous story of the night sky that is completely new for most of us who have grown up with a distinctly Greek version of night sky stories and constellations. There is a powerful cultural opportunity to engage with our tribal partners in appropriate ways to include a much broader Oregon story that I find exciting. The broad goals and outcomes of our investment in dark sky tourism in the Outback are: number one, in the absence of any controlling public lands agencies like state parks, to bring a diverse group of community stakeholders together to gain a shared understanding of night sky tourism. Number two, to understand the regional challenges and opportunities of pursuing any formal nomination with the IDA. And number three, create a network of supporters and advocates that could serve as an organizing body to broaden and sustain these conversations, the Outback Dark Sky Network. The members of the ODSN Steering Committee and Network represent a true cross-regional collaboration and include the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association, Travel Oregon, the BLM, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which manage a lot of refuges out in the outback, tribes, counties, private landholders and ranchers, nonprofits groups like Playa, the Arts Residency Program, Friends of the Owyhee, Adventure Harney, public libraries, chambers, and local businesses. You've read the charter language network on this slide, and that is the goal of the group. To close, we are engaged in a landscape scale project to celebrate and preserve our night sky heritage in the Oregon Outback and create community appropriate year-round outdoor rec opportunities. Our ultimate goal is the creation of the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Sanctuary, and you can track our progress toward that goal and engage with us at our Facebook page, which Kaylin will put in the chat. And I encourage you to check us out and stay with us as we pursue this. As you can see, the process that Justina and Michael and everybody has gone through, it's lengthy, but we are committed and we're on our way. And hopefully in the next year, we'll be able to share more about that. So thank you all for listening. And I think we'll try and swing back and see if Michael can finish his presentation.
Okay, we're dialing back to the point where my rural internet cut me off, and I'm still waiting for the there. No, one more back. Out further. There. So. If you, getting back to sky quality meters and our network of meters throughout Oregon, this is an example of the data from half a dozen of these photometers, all taken on the same night. This is the night of the 1st and 2nd of August of 2019. And what you see is a graph of the zenith or overhead sky brightness over time, and it drops very rapidly during evening twilight, and then during the course of the night remains relatively constant, and then of course at dawn the sky gets very bright very quickly. And you'll see that among these half dozen sites, the red plot is a business on the east edge of Bend, and its sky of course is quite urban bright. The blue chart is from a residence on Aubrey Butte in Bend, more of a little bit darker. And then yellow is the Oregon Observatory at Sun River, which is quite a bit darker than the previous two. Light blue is Prineville Reservoir State Park. And then magenta is the University of Oregon's Pine Mountain Observatory. And then the darkest site of these on that night was Indian Trail Spring, the site of the Oregon Star Party in the Yochika Mountains east of Prineville. So this data is measurements made every 5 minutes, every single night of the year by our network of stations. That requires no human intervention other than every 3 months downloading the data to a laptop and replacing the batteries. And let's see if I can. So this plot is a summary in the form of a box plot of the data from all of the stations that have been in operation long enough to have an appreciable amount of data, a year or more of data. And it clearly reveals the sort of typical night sky quality at each of these sites and how they differ. This data has been filtered to eliminate the effects of either sun or moonlight or clouds. So you're just getting the characteristic clear, moonless night sky quality. And this is all collected without human intervention. And it's a huge amount of data that gives you a clear fingerprint for what the characteristic night sky quality of each site. And then we mentioned earlier, our other project is supporting certification of dark sky places, and we've talked a lot about Prineville Reservoir, Oregon's first dark sky park, and our work with Cottonwood Canyon and Lake State Park. That work includes, among other things, providing technical assistance. One of the more technical tasks is performing outdoor lighting inventories. And what you see here is a screenshot of a portion of the lighting inventory document for Lake State Park. And it consists of, geotagged daytime photography of light fixtures, both context and detail, and then a nighttime photography of the light fixtures, and then also photometer measurements of the light fixtures. And this leads into, that provides a foundation too for the parks, lighting, outdoor lighting project, because inevitably there'll be fixtures that need to be replaced, and this provides a guide for those. Another project was identifying additional dark sky park candidates in Oregon. This is a GIS analysis of characteristic night sky quality over Oregon State Parks properties based on the 2016 new Atlas of Artificial Night Sky Brightness. The results are filtered to show only parks with camping and therefore nighttime visitation, and an audience for night sky public outreach events. So we found 33 parks that, based on their night sky quality, could qualify for International Dark Sky Park certification. And they're also color-coded by Travel Oregon regions, and it gives you kind of in a snapshot a sense of the geographic diversity of these potential candidate parks. So there's a possibility that someday Oregon could have over 30 international dark sky parks. So we have an entire universe hiding right above our heads. For most people, lost in the glare of our own lights. But we can change that. It's as simple as changing a light bulb. Well, many light bulbs. You might ask, how many dark sky advocates does it take to change a light bulb? Definitely many. And experiencing firsthand what we have been missing turns citizens into advocates, and creating opportunities for those experiences where it starts. And we've seen how through our park systems and other outreach efforts, we can provide those opportunities. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a lovely notion. Thank you to Bob and Justina and Jill as well for the frankly inspiring presentation about current efforts to, support, promote, designate dark sky places in Oregon, and sort of what the future might hold as well. We have a great land management and tourism audience in the crowd, and so I feel like your work is really relevant to us here in the summit, and frankly brought me back to probably my favorite night this summer, camping up high in the Ochoco's to watch the Perseid meteor showers. So right now, I want to hand it over to Michael Gibson, the Idaho and Southeast Oregon Field Coordinator for Trout Unlimited's Angler Conservation Project, and the panel on the work of the Owyhee Sportsmen Coalition in a very special corner of Oregon. Go ahead and take it away, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin, and greetings. Glad to be speaking with you at the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit. My name is Michael Gibson. As he said, I'm the Southeast Oregon Field Coordinator and a member of the Hawaii Sportsmen Coalition. Our group is represented today by Tim Davis at Friends of the Owyhee, Kevin Martin, who's president of the Oregon chapter of the Foundation for North American Wild Sheep, and Michael O'Casey with the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. You'll be hearing more from those three later. And our other coalition members for the Owyhee Sportsmen are the Oregon Hunters Association, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and the Northwest Sport Fishing Industry Association. We are also very pleased to have support from a number of industry partners, including Alpaca Rafts, First Light Clothing, Maven Optics, Boss Shot Shells, Seek Outside, and Oregon Packworks. These companies are all very committed to conservation and our public lands. The Hawaii Canyonlands is a special place. In Oregon, the Owyhee watershed is almost entirely located in Malheur County. You can see from the map on this slide. It is home to native red band trout, sage grouse, bighorn sheep, mule deer, pronghorn, partridge, and a world-renowned rainbow and brown trout fishery on the lower Owyhee River. Obviously, it's a sportsman's paradise. Hunters and anglers value this wildlife-rich landscape and are working locally with important stakeholders to discuss the best way to secure long-term conservation policies that protect its rugged character, solitude, and the hunting and angling opportunities that drive our traditions. Our organizations support the multiple uses of public land in this region and recognize that good stewardship means sustainable ranching, wildlife habitat management, public access, and meaningful resource conservation. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden has a piece of legislation that would start the Owyhees down this path. Senate Bill 2828, the Malheur Community Empowerment for the Owyhee Act, was introduced last Congress, and we're hoping that it will be introduced in this Congress and considered back in DC. It seeks to permanently resolve the management status of a little over 2 million acres of wilderness study area. And you can see the wilderness study area units on the Oregon side of that map are the dark brown layers. This legislation would designate some of this wilderness study area as wilderness and release some back to multiple use. There's also funding for county road maintenance and recreation infrastructure throughout the Owyhee Canyonlands. We think it is a great piece of legislation supported by local stakeholders, and we hope it moves forward. You can check us out and learn more at owyheesportsman.org or follow us at Owyhee Sportsman on Instagram. I'd like to show you a short video. It's about a little over 6 minutes long. It's a piece that we worked on really hard over about 1.5 years' time, and the coalition, we've got actually a few videos that we're editing, and they all feature the great hunting and fishing opportunities and outdoor recreation opportunities in the Owyhees. I will give you a word of warning. This is a hunting film made for a hunting audience. So there is a kill shot of a mule deer at 3 minutes and 45 seconds of this film. If this is something that disturbs you, you may want to look away or mute your sound. We think it is very tastefully done, and it's, hunting. It's obviously a small part of hunting, but it is a part of hunting to take animals. So after the video, we'll be back with Tim Davis. So without further ado, please enjoy the video. We think it really captures the essence of Owyhee country.
It's the Malheur County Owyhee legislation, which seeks to resolve differences in this extraordinary part of my state, the Owyhees.
We commend Senator Wyden for stepping up to the plate and coming up with what we feel is a solution that preserves working landscapes, that allows people to keep raising cattle here, but it also ensures that folks that value the conservation of this place for recreation and for sporting opportunity will continue to get to do that as well. So I'm Kyle Smith. I'm the Oregon field coordinator for Trout Unlimited. I had enough points to draw an Owyhee mule deer tag, and we spent a lot of time out here scouting. We did end up finding some incredible deer. Got to see a lot of other wildlife while we were here. We saw some cougar while we were out scouting for deer, which was just incredible to get to watch them for a while.
I'm watching a couple of kittens and a mom running around out here in this field. Pretty awesome. You can just see their long tails running back and forth. It's opening morning of deer season, October 3rd. We're out here in the Hawaii Canyonlands looking for big muley bucks. Heading up to a place we've seen them in the last couple months, and fingers crossed we find a good one. So, been up here for a couple hours, and we bumped 2 does on the way in. Saw a real nice buck pronghorn up on top here. 2 bucks on the far ridge, 1 little raghorn and 1 pretty deep, just 2-point. And a ton of chucker. So we found this buck this morning. Decided to leave him and check with Bryce and Michael to see what they found this morning. They found quite a bit of does, but not a lot of bucks. We're back with that buck that we found this morning to see if we can relocate him and get a better look at him and make a decision on whether he's the one. So we think if he's where we left him, he's at the top of this draw in front of us. We're gonna cut around this knob, keep our wind, and keep from skylining ourselves for him, and go check on how his little nap was this afternoon.
A lot of people see the river corridor, which is exceptional. You know, it's called the Grand Canyon of Oregon for a reason. Really a remarkable float. But even that you don't see but maybe a quarter of the splendor of the Owyhee. We dropped maybe 500 feet, got a shuttle down in here, dropped 500 feet from the canyon rim, and just walking along this little creek bed. It's a perfectly paved walking path for us down to the river. We're gonna go put on and float 9 or 10 miles in pack rafts, but this is just incredible. The highlight of our time out here for me really was floating the Owyhee on pack rafts during kind of an off season.
All right, I got it.
During the spring, you get a lot of rafts. A lot of people come from Boise. A lot of people come from Portland to float the river, but to get to be on it in October when we were literally the only people on the river was really a highlight for me.
Whether you're a local landowner or somebody who comes out and chucker hunts several times a year, or somebody who floats the canyon every 3 or 4 years. I mean, somebody who comes out and spends time in this landscape is going to find an appreciation for it and want to find some solutions that make sure that it doesn't disappear. And that's the real goal of both the Owyhee Sportsmen Coalition and the work that Senator Wyden's doing right now. the voices of hunters and anglers are a key component to building a voice of agreements. It's just critical to make sure that this landscape can be sustained for generations for the things that we so enjoy.
We're asking too much of the landscape to continue to do nothing.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Martin from the Oregon chapter of the Foundation for North American Wild Sheep, Oregon FNAWS. Our organization is a member of the Hawaii Sportsmen Coalition. My presentation is going to be a bit different than some of those that you've been seeing, although I am going to continue our journey in the far southeastern part of Oregon, the Hawaii country. We are not going to spend a lot of time talking about the recreation and the trail opportunities, but I'm going to focus on one of the specific reasons folks journey to the Hawaii country and the efforts it takes to assure this resource is available for our viewing, our pursuing, and available to make this wild backcountry wild. When folks think of the Hawaii country and wildlife, what comes to mind are mule deer herds with amazing large bucks, sage-grouse strutting on leks, amazing trout in unique green spaces slashing through canyon bottoms, and bighorn sheep. Majestic rams standing along the rims in the canyons. Big country, backcountry, wild country, all are terms for this corner of Oregon. Today I'm going to focus on the bighorns in the lower Owyhee, although there are many herds and other species with just as interesting and wonderful stories. This one is of abundance, loss, restoration, and continued struggles to assure this iconic species continues in this wild country. This story is an example of what is playing out throughout much of bighorn sheep country across the West. When I think of the Hawaii country, I'm thinking of Southeast Oregon, Malheur County, from Ontario south along the Idaho border to Nevada, west on the Nevada line to McDermott, McDermott north to Burns Junction, north to Highway 20 and back to Ontario, the landscape where the Owyhee River flows. As for the Owyhee, we talk about bighorns in the lower Owyhee, which includes everything downstream or north of Rome, and the upper Owyhee, which includes those areas upstream or south of Rome to Idaho and into Idaho, as well as the rattlesnake 10-mile herds to the southwest. Let's talk a little bit about what bighorn sheep habitat is. It's those cliffs and rim rocks, those rocky outcrops in the canyons and mountain countries of the West. It includes steep escape terrain, which is critical for lambs to survive. Grasses are the primary diet. Grassy areas intermixed with rough, rocky country, with clean water available and scattered across the landscape. Historically, bighorns were scattered across the West in large numbers. It is estimated there were well over 1.5 million. They hit a low of 25,000 animals in the 1950s and 60s, and were extirpated from much of their historic range. Today, we are looking at numbers closer to 85,000. Bighorn sheep numbers plummeted due to multiple issues: unregulated hunting, competition for forage with domestic livestock, and to diseases and parasites. The bighorns in the lower Owyhee were first reintroduced in 1965 with 17 bighorns from Heart Mountain National Antelope Refuge. The population grew steadily into the 90s when populations began to slow. The releases from 65 to 94 were all from animals that were originally from the Williams Lake area of British Columbia, with a few Penticton British Columbia animals introduced in the early 2000s. There was concern about limited genetic diversity within the herd, so in the 2000s, genetic samples were collected, which highlighted the problem. Following this sampling, additional animals from Nevada were brought in to supplement the population's genetic makeup. In 2007, the lower Hawaii bighorn populations were resampled, and the analysis of the genetic makeup was again evaluated. In short, the genetic boost from the new bighorns helped, and the population began to grow. By 2015, there were around 425 bighorns in the lower Owyhee country. Supplementation of reintroduced populations can be a powerful tool to increase genetic diversity and enhance the probability of a population surviving. Half of the reestablished populations of bighorn sheep in North America derive from efforts introducing a few individuals into habitats with little possibility of genetic exchange through natural migration. Bighorn sheep populations across the West are becoming increasingly isolated because of human development and climate change. These small and isolated populations suffer considerable risk, and active genetic management may be critical for their long-term survival. Because of the large backcountry terrain where bighorns live, I think I'm ahead of myself one. Where bighorns live, helicopters are often used to accomplish population and health monitoring. Biologists are looking at the herd's health and composition, things like the number of rams, the number of lambs, the number of lambs per ewes. Those are all important indicators of the population's health, the population numbers, and is it maintaining itself. If there are indicators of health issues, biologists will look at additional detail into the population health by capturing individuals and taking samples. For example, in 2015, a pneumonia pathogen, Mycoplasma Owyhee pneumoniae, MOVI for short, and we'll stick with MOVI the rest of the presentation, was detected in the lower Hawaii bighorns. So what is MOVI and why is that important? Well, it's a species of Mycoplasma bacteria. It's a respiratory pathogen of domestic sheep, domestic goats, and wild sheep. MOVI is linked to the deaths of bighorn sheep and massive reductions in population numbers across the West. And there are no vaccines available, although research continues and hopes to find a solution. MOVI is a respiratory disease. It causes death and pneumonia and often death in bighorn sheep. MOVI is considered a primary factor in past and present extirpations across the West. There continues to be an ongoing threat from contact with domestic sheep and domestic goats and from contact with infected bighorn sheep. Once a population is infected, you see an all-age die-off occur, followed by reduced lamb recruitment. Lambs succumb quickly to the disease sooner if they're born, and the disease can remain chronic in the population, often for long periods of time, for many years, even decades, causing low numbers and even population loss. Remember I said that MOVI was detected in 2015 in the lower Hawaii populations, and they numbered at that time about 425 animals. The following spring, when Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife conducted a survey, it indicated the population had declined by 75%. And by best estimate today, there's less than 50 bighorns left. Following this die-off, a handful of bighorns were collared and monitored for disease. The strain of MOVI detected best matched MOVI from domestic sheep. So what do? You need to identify the strain of MOVI. You need to look at the potential connectivity between existing bighorn herds and between bighorn herds and domestic sheep and goat. And this can got a pop-up on my screen. I don't know if you guys can see that. This can assist in determining the potential origins. Are there matches? Is it a new outbreak or other populations of is it in other populations of wild sheep and goats? So continued monitoring is needed. Both population numbers and health, on both population numbers and the health, to assure bighorn sheep continue to occur in the Hawaii country and elsewhere across Oregon. But population health monitoring is expensive and intensive and often includes capturing bighorns for analysis. Because of their remote country, this often includes the use of helicopters. Once in hand, samples are taken to understand the health of the populations. Sampling similar to what many of us experience when we go to the doctors to get tonsillar swabs, blood draws, nasal swabs, fecal samples. Postmortem samples are also taken from animals that die. If an animal has very recently died, often that animal is sent to a lab for sampling. In those populations that are hunted, hunter monitoring is also important. Hunters, other recreationists, and permittees are additional eyes in remote areas that can provide information on the populations and population health. There is always a mandatory check-in with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife biologists if an animal is taken. In addition, habitat improvements and management is also important. Vegetation management, such as prescribed fire and juniper management, water management, such as protecting natural springs and seeps, developing and maintaining catch basins and guzzlers. Surveys, population management, and disease assessments and habitat improvements continue. With such low densities of bighorns as in the Owyhee populations, the difficult terrain to observe bighorns in, and sheep that are becoming wary of helicopters, it's difficult to find and survey them. Lamb production continues to be low. Without lamb production, the population continues to decline. At this time, management options are limited and all are very expensive. We do know that there is a need to continue to try to keep bighorns separated from any domestic sheep and domestic goats. In some areas of the West, agencies are using a test and remove protocol to reduce heavy shedders from the population. A heavy shedder is an animal carrying heavy Moby loads and infecting others throughout the population. Test and remove was developed in the Hell's Canyon bighorn sheep populations, where Moby and die-offs have been a continued issue. It is showing some success and is now being replicated across the West as a potential process to improve the health and populations of bighorn sheep. Test and remove may or may not be an option for the lower Owyhee. This is tough, big country, and the bighorns are difficult to find. It is an intensive handling and sampling process that is expensive, and in countries such as the Owyhee needs the use of helicopters and lots of folks to capture and survey. At this time, plans on how to move forward are only in discussions, but it will continue to take investments in both time and resources to ensure the Hawaii country continues to have their iconic bighorn sheep on the rims, canyons, and mountains in this remote corner of Oregon. Thank you.
Hi, all. My name's Tim Davis. I'm founder and executive director for Friends of the Owyhee. I grew up in Malheur County my entire life. In 2015, I started Friends of the Owyhee just to get folks out on the landscape and understand what makes the Owyhee so special. In 2019, I moved over to become full-time executive director. The Owyhee's always been out my back door. It's always been an inspiration to me, and I want to inspire others by it. The Owyhee covers a hair over 7 million acres in Oregon, Idaho, and Nevada. Almost 50% of the watershed is in Oregon. This area is vastly undeveloped. It has roughly 170 paved road miles and an estimated 2,000 person population within the watershed itself, the majority of that population being in Owyhee, Nevada. This area is truly wild and remote. The Owyhee has opportunities for just about every form of recreation you can imagine. It's well known for brown trout fishing in the river below the dam, its multiple hot springs, whitewater rafting in the spring, hunting seasons in the fall, as well as day hikes and backpacking, mountain biking and bike packing, OHV and horseback riding, and even some pockets for rock climbing. More and more people are discovering the recreation opportunities and the natural beauty of the Owyhee. This area is even becoming well known for its dark night skies. It's part of the biggest area left in the lower 48 with minimal light pollution. With more and more folks looking for areas to observe the stars uninhibited, this is another unique quality of the Owyhee that could bring more people to the area. It is also extremely for the area's wildlife. It's great that there are so many opportunities for outdoor recreation in the Owyhee. As someone that partakes in many of these recreational activities, I see more and more people coming to the Owyhee as well to enjoy their public lands. And it's becoming apparent that with more visitors, we are starting to run into an issue. The population on the doorstep is pushing 1 million people, mainly in the Boise metro area. We want to all find balance for the Owyhee for our wildlife, but also be an area for man to visit, but stays untrammeled by man. The Owyhee is now at a crossroads to find this balance. With more and more people coming, more management needs are rising. Now is the time to get in front of it before damage is done to the land and to the wildlife that may take generations to recover from. As the population continues to grow, there are more and more things pulling travelers and locals to the doorstep of the Owyhee to allow easy access out. Data I have received from Oregon State Parks at Lake Owyhee, the only staffed area in the entire Owyhee, indicates that there's an average of 250,000 cars visiting the lake each year. With this number for Lake Owyhee, and considering the frequent other spots in the Owyhee that are visited, such as Leslie Gulch, Sucker Creek, Jordan Craters, we can estimate that anywhere from 400 to 500,000 people visit the Owyhee each year. To put that in context, there are 20 national parks that have fewer visitors than that in a year. To name a few, Great Basin National Park in Nevada, the North Cascades in Washington. The popular Redwoods National Park gets about the same visitation as what we estimate in the Owyhee. And that number is going to continue to rise. RV parks are under construction in Ontario, Nissa, and Vail that will provide more than 200 more spots for travelers to visit the Owyhee. The RV park in Jordan Valley just reopened. Nampa and Boise also have RV parks in the plans. With the additional tourist housing resources, traffic is sure to increase over the coming years. Other than Lake Owyhee, the Owyhee region lacks caretaking and management staff, leaving the BLM struggling to keep up with the influx of traffic. The Vail BLM district manages 5.1 million acres in total. Over 3.5 million acres of that is in the Owyhee region of Oregon. Yet the BLM does not have any current or near future plans to create better recreation or maintenance opportunities in the Owyhee. There are only 2 recreation planners in the district, and it has a 40% overall staff vacancy right now. The only recreation information infrastructure available is at Leslie Gulch, which is closer to the Idaho population centers than those centers in Malheur County. Improved and increased focus on recreation management is as the local population grows. Now is the time for public landowners to step up and help that can build new economic engine for Southeast Oregon. Hard time getting my slide to move. Nope, too far. My slides aren't working.
Hey, well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for hanging in there for the technical challenges. Thanks, Tim, for that presentation. I think it's really telling about the recreation boom that's happening, not just in Oregon, but also throughout all of the West. COVID has really shown us that outdoor recreation is critical to the things that we find solace in and the ways that we continue to move despite some of the challenges of our social conditions. So just as a reminder, my name is Michael O'Casey, and I'm the Oregon Field Representative for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership and a member of the Hawaii Sportsmen Coalition. And I'm just going to close out this session by telling a quick story or two about the Owyhee and my time out there, and then just tell the folks who are listening about some opportunities to get involved in making sure this landscape is not lost to climate change and wildfire and invasives and overutilized by recreation. And we have an opportunity right now to make sure that this landscape that is truly one of the most remote in the lower 48 states protected for the long-term future. And so in thinking through this presentation, how do you begin to tell just a story about a place where you spent the better part of a decade now, I've spent hundreds of nights under these awesome dark desert skies. So thanks for that earlier presentation. I understand some of the deeper meanings behind what dark skies are. And it's really a treat. And there's no better place to see those than in the Owyhee country. And I started with this slide here that was taken by a friend of mine, Jim Davis. And I wish we were in a live presentation because I'd ask of the audience how many people know exactly where this is. It's if you know, maybe you can send Kaylin a chat to try to identify the place. I'll keep it secret, but it's truly one of the most remote places, almost 40 miles from anywhere paved in any paved highway in Oregon, Idaho, or Nevada. And when you think about stories, sometimes those first memories are what stick with you the most. And so my first ever trip out into the Owyhee occurred with my first real job. And for those that work in the wildlife or outdoor rec world, your first real job is often meant that you don't have to search for a new job in 3 months, and oftentimes comes with a desk or a computer. And I got both of those things in 2012 when I started working for the Oregon Natural Desert Association as their stewardship coordinator. And as a part of that job, I was told to learn about the high desert ecosystem and learn about the beauty that the high desert holds. And the Hawaii Canyonlands are a part of that. And that's meant a lot of time traveling out into these landscapes. And my first ever trip out into the Owyhee, one of the key segments of this story is that ONDA is a nonprofit organization that gets all donated vehicles. And as the new employee of ONDA, I often got demoted to whatever car was left in the lot. And I was driving out into the Owyhee country in 1980 Ford F-150 pickup, which had a four-stick gear, AM-only radio, and perhaps most interestingly, was fully shade carpeted on the interior. And so for my first ever trip out into the Owyhee, I drive 6 hours out to exactly this place. And I stared into the gap that was West Little Owyhee Canyons here and was struck with awe of what a fascinating place this Owyhee Canyons was. It's a place not many people get to. I spent my whole life in Oregon, the first 18 years of my life, and never even heard of the Owyhee Canyons. And it wasn't until my job with ONDA that I started to learn more about it. And I've now spent the better part of a decade out here. And it's, not just recreation for me anymore, but the ways that I participate in the Owyhee are different now. Just last week, I was out, let's see if I can find this photo here. Just last week, I was out on a mule deer hunt in the southern part of the Owyhee. And this is a photo kind of mimicking my life through binoculars out in the Owyhee. People think of the Owyhee as just a barren desert oftentimes. But if you look here, you'll see these elaborate stands of aspen that are just starting to turn color and hold a vast amount of wildlife in these stands. And I spent days of my life sitting here, seated above this rimrock country in search of a big mule deer, which I was never able to find, but I did have some awesome sightings. I got to watch red foxes eating voles on the ground, and I got to see a cougar come out of this aspen stand and go down to water and see coyotes running around the landscape. And I saw many deer, just not the one I was looking for. Or maybe it's the time when you've just gotten a bird dog and you're out chucker hunting throughout the fields. And I think one of the most interesting things about hunting is that it makes you wander to places where you'd never otherwise wander. And there's no better way to do that than following a dog over hill and yonder looking for the next chucker. I mean, they're just such an amazing creature, and definitely will keep me fit as a father now of 2 boys, hopefully long into the future. And then, that film that we had earlier today, some of the memories that were made on that film were just spectacular. And I can't think of urging someone to do more than spend time on the river of the Owyhee. I mean, that's truly the lifeblood of this place. And it's a spectacular landscape that every Oregonian should know more about. And so spending 3 days down here on the Owyhee River, not seeing a soul, was an experience that I'll cherish for a long time to come. And so in closing this story out, I think what I would urge everyone to do here is to reach out to Senator Wyden or reach out to your local conservation group, whether that be Friends of the Owyhee or Trout Unlimited or Oregon Natural Desert Association and find out ways to get involved, because this is a truly exceptional landscape that we have here in Oregon, that's at risk of getting lost, due to climate change and wildfire and invasive weeds and improper recreation. And I think there's something that Senator Wyden is doing that is really in line with what needs to happen in this landscape. I mean, we've had 1.2 million acres of wilderness study areas in this landscape since 1980, and we haven't figured out what to do with them. And that's almost 40 years' time that has gone by without a solution. And so I think I would urge every one of you to reach out to those conservation organizations, reach out to Senator Wyden, thank him for his work, and urge him to continue to get engaged. And, whether that's through hunting, fishing, pack rafting, just getting out for hikes. I think one of the beautiful things about public lands is that they connect so many things that are normally polarizing. And that's a pretty awesome thing to have happen. So thanks everyone for sticking with us today. You can learn more about us at OwyeheSportsmans.org. And we're open for any questions if there's time.
Thank you, Michael, and everyone on the panel. Sitting here this morning, I'm inspired to go and drive east and probably stay a night and look at the skies too. So that counts as a success in my mind. I have just one quick question, and we'll close out. And I'm wondering, for folks who may be tuned in here and are familiar with past efforts, around protecting the Owyhee, how local community engagement maybe is playing into your work, and if that's different than work in the past, and why engaging with the local and surrounding communities is so important to your work. And maybe Michael Gibson would want to talk about that, but feel free, anyone, to take that one on.
Yeah, thanks, Kalen. Thanks for the question. I mean, the work we do, Trout Unlimited, I can speak for, and I think all of our organizations that are working on this campaign, it's all about local involvement. To have a durable, long-lasting plan that will protect this landscape, it has to be supported by locals. It really does. And we spend a lot of time on what we call at TU a dirt road campaign. And that is getting out on the landscape and meeting the people that live there and work there, and making sure that anything that we get behind and anything that's proposed is supported by those locals.
Yeah, and I think this time around it's maybe a little different than in the past. In 2015, there was a big monument push that was not locally supported. And this time around, Senator Wyden has really done a good job of bringing all the stakeholders to the table. There's a group called the Owyhee Basin Stewardship Coalition, which is made up of local businesses and ranchers. And they've been working alongside of groups like Friends of the Owyhee and Tim Davis and ONDA with Oregon Natural Desert Association. And, they've ultimately come up with this bill together, and they found a compromise that'll work. And I think that's a rare thing in these political climates. And it's something that I think all of us should advocate for. Maybe don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, and work towards the final solution here.
All right. Well, I appreciate those sentiments, and just want to extend gratitude to all of our panelists this morning. Before the folks that are tuned in sign off, please take the short survey that's right below this video. Give us feedback about the session, and hopefully have time to come back in 15 minutes after getting some coffee to learn more about either volunteer vacations or innovative financing for recreation on the Deschutes National Forest. And with that, wish you all a good rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Galen. Thanks all.